Om Gurave Namah. Om Gurave Namah. Om Gurave Namah. Hi everyone, welcome back to this series on the chart of Russell Brand, asking the question, is Russell Brand going to prison? You may know that he is going to be tried in court on starting October 12th, 2026 for potentially a few months on rape and sexual assault charges, which may result in a incarceration sentencing. Now, it's interesting to explore his chart because there are so many um, factors to consider, and also he is very much an open book, and he has really extroverted his personal life and inner world that can help us try to make sense of the chart. Now, as you know, there is a discrepancy in the time of birth due to a lack of clarity on when he was born. Was he born early in the day on June the 6th, June the 4th, 1975, so early in the morning? He said he was born at midnight. Does that mean 12:05 a.m. or does it mean something around 11:58 p.m. In the evening? And so there's a debate about his actual birth time. When you look at the nakshatras that these times would represent for him, um, he would either be Uttara Bhadrapada or he would be Revati. Now, I've done a previous video showing the characteristics of both of these nakshatras, asking you as the listener to make a decision. I personally think that he fits Uttara Bhadrapada better than Revati, but it's still only a drop in the bucket in terms of chart rectification because there are still so many other aspects to consider. Now, I want to turn to another part of the horoscope, which is the Aruda Lagna. So the Aruda Lagna in the D1 chart is in Scorpio, and it has Rahu. So Rahu is sitting in the Aruda Lagna in Scorpio. And this is true for both times. So this is a um, very certain fact is that his Aruda Lagna is Scorpio with Rahu in the first house of the Aruda Lagna. This is significant. Now, if you're not familiar with Aruda Lagna is like the image that you have been granted through your chart, through your birth that helps you succeed in the world or shapes the way you are in the world. It's one thing to you know be who you are as a person. Your internal world is determined by your lagna. The lagna here in this case is Capricorn, Makara. But who you are in the world and how you're perceived in the world, so the image you're giving to the world, is the Aruda Lagna. Now, the Aruda Lagna, there is a innate Aruda Lagna, but the Aruda Lagna can change, and the person, the native, can actually take efforts to change the Aruda Lagna. So, for example, if say you're a business person and this is your image, your like business and so on. If you renunciate and you change your clothing and you become a renunciate, um, then this is changing the Aruda Lagna. This is what my teacher Sanjay Rath has taught, which is that the Aruda Lagna can change. So Scorpio with Rahu is not a very good image because Rahu is debilitated in Scorpio, and it's a difficult position. It's a debilitated planet in the Aruda Lagna. That shows that there will be a negative image in the public eye. And so we see that. Now, Rahu is, it could be politics, right? There is an element of potentially self-aggrandizement, right? That's part of the image. And maybe this excessive sexuality could also be there because Rahu is addiction. Rahu can can be can influence somebody towards addictive traits and addictive personality. Usually, somebody with Rahu in the first house is somebody that people do not innately trust. You don't get a trusting vibe from that person. You get a kind of it could be charismatic, but not necessarily somebody you just innately trust. Now, that is the image, right? Now, I'm not saying that that image isn't real. The image is real, and the image even has its impact on the person. The native may actually act in the image that that society bestows on them, and they become that person. So with the Aruda Lagna, it's very powerful. It's not just Maya. It's not just illusion. It is an image that's projected from your chart onto, it's an image that's projected from your chart onto the person, and people will perceive you in a certain way based on your Aruda Lagna, and you then also act in a certain way based on how you're perceived. So it's quite complex. Now, interestingly, Brand in his when he defends himself against these allegations, he said that yes, I was a sex addict. I was very promiscuous. We're talking into the thousands of sexual encounters during my time as a sex addict. Um, uh, but also he was rewarded for his reputation. Um, he was given, in jest, I imagine, but he was given like awards in his celebrity circles for being promiscuous, for being um, a philanderer, and so on. And so the image is there, right? This Rahu in Scorpio image. Now, interestingly, addition to that is that that the Aruda Lagna is the place of Badakstana from the Lagna, the 11th from the Lagna for Capricorn. For Chara Rashis, for movable signs, as Capricorn is, the 11th house is always the Badakstana. And the Badakesh is the lord of that uh, house. Now, the Badak is obstacle. So Badak is not a good thing. It's a difficult energy. We all have it. Everybody has a house in their chart which represents the obstacle based on whether your ascendant is movable, fixed, or dual. So in the case of Capricorn, in the case of Makara Lagna, Scorpio is always the Badak sthana, always the place of Badak, the place of obstacle. Now, but not everybody has the Aruda Lagna in their Badak sthana. And that's what's interesting here, is that the image is blocking the true self. The image and the true self are at odds, right? The image and the true self are not, are counter. And this is why people some people will describe him as a polarizing figure. Now, is he actually a polarizing figure? I think not. I think that that's not an accurate description of his personality. But at the same time, I would say that there are these factions of people who follow him or pay attention to him. There are factions who see him very much one way, and there are others that see him very much another way. So some people will see the Makara Lagna with Lagnesh in the sixth house. So Capricorn, um, which is here, right? Capricorn with the Lord of Capricorn, in the sixth house. And what does this mean? Um, this is like, Saturn in the sixth house is actually a good position when you have a malefic planet in a Dushtana. And Saturn is the natural Nisargika planet for the sixth house because the sixth house is a difficult house. When you have a difficult planet in a difficult house, you it's like you're kind of able to meet the challenges where they are at. So soft planets like the moon, Venus in the sixth house, it's very unfortunate. It's the sixth house is too harsh for those soft planets. But for malefics, the sixth house works. And the sixth house is the house of argumentation, dispute. It's also the house of litigation. And interestingly, it's the house of the courts. So the courtroom is represented in the sixth house. Um, why would we say the courtroom is represented in the sixth house? Well, it's because when you go to court, it's because of some breakage of contract. Contracts are in the seventh house, either it be a legal contract, a business contract, a social contract. Contracts are in the seventh house, and the loss of contracts is finds itself in the sixth house. The 12th house from any house is the loss of the significations of that house. So the loss of contract is in the sixth house. So when people go to court, it's because there was something done that was a violation of a contract. And the women that have come forward and are, pressing charges, their claim is that we had a social contract, we were friends, or there was no agreement to have sex, and then sex was demanded and forced and against my will. No means no, and you didn't respect that social contract. And we have laws that are also upholding that social contract. So the sixth house is courts, and here we have Saturn as the Lagnesh in the sixth house, meaning my interpretation of that is he is going to feel like he's in his element in the courtroom. And prior to the courtroom, what has he been doing? He's had a YouTube channel with between 6 and 7 million followers. At some point in the last 5 years, he was one of the top YouTube YouTubers, YouTube speakers, and he posted videos every single day talking to his audience about speaking truth to power, speaking truth, exposing the dirty lies of the government, of the media, of corporations, mega corporations. And he said it over and over and over and over and over. This is not pleasant speaking. This is not the stuff of everyday people. Most people don't speak truth to power because, well, you know that if you speak truth to power, there's a risk that you're going to be punished. And so, this is a reality, but it absolutely did not stop him from doing that. And one of the ways that I interpret that is that the Lagnesh is Saturn. Saturn endures suffering. So when Saturn is in the sixth house, it is okay to have that kind of suffering that it uh, um, could be brought on by speaking truth to power. And it's in Gemini, which is the sign of Mercury. Mercury is communication. So Mercury is all the media, entertainment, news outlets, media, YouTube, all that. We can see that through Gemini, through Mercury. So here I think that you have um, this scenario. If you want to look at his, uh, if you want to look at another yoga in his chart, we can count the number of planets in the houses and make a determination on his Sankhya Yoga. The Sankhya Yoga scheme is about counting the number of planets that occupy houses. So if we were to do that, just as an exercise, there are 3 planets in Pisces. So that's one um, sign. And then there are 3 planets in, excluding Rahu and Ketu, there are 2 planets in Taurus, Saturn, and Venus. So there are 4 houses that have planets in them. And this maps to Kedara Yoga. And the ruling planet of Kedara Yoga is Mercury. And so he is Kedara Yoga. Kedara Yoga people like nature because it's ruled by Mercury. So they like walking in the forest, they like trees, plants, ecosystems. They're interested in nature. And unlike Pasha Yoga people, so that's when you have 5 planets, 5 houses are owning all the planets. Um, they prioritize relationships. But Kedara people don't prioritize relationships over nature. They prioritize nature over relationships. And so this is where a truth speaking quality comes forward. Because if you prioritize relationships, you may be less of a truth speaker, not that you're a bad person, but you may be less of a truth speaker because you're more interested in protecting your friends, your kin, the people around you, and so on. But Kedara people are okay to witness the consequences of their truth speaking, um, because that is the most important thing for them is nature, human nature, the natural world, and so on. They want to know. Now, another point is that when you look at Kedar, Kedar is ruled by Mercury, right? And if the planets, if there is a planet in the houses ruled by Mercury, either Gemini or Virgo, then there is a calling in life. So some people have a calling in life, some people don't, right? If there is a planet in either of the houses ruled by the Sankhya Yoga planet, ruling planet, then we say there's a calling. Now, in this case, there is one planet in the Mercury signs, and that's Saturn. So that shows a calling. And so this is more than just, something to do. I'm bored. Let's start a YouTube channel and, talk about, the evils of the world and so on. No, this is a calling. This is something that is uh, like a compulsion, something compelled to do. And Saturn is there, and Saturn is Lagnesh. So the calling involves the personhood. It involves one's personality, one's ego, and all of that, as opposed to a calling where, say the Lagnesh is not in the Sankhya houses, then you might have a profession like a doctor or a lawyer. It's a calling to be of service. In this case, the calling involves the Lagnesh, so it involves the personality. So speaking truth to power is this 6th house Saturn in Gemini. Now, so here we have a scenario where the Aruda Lagna, which is Scorpio, with Rahu in Scorpio, which is this image of this person who is like a snake charmer, a womanizer, an addict, somebody that should not be really trusted, is now and also blocks the image of the true self. Is is now at the center of this debate, and so the perceptions of the courts will have to, people who are involved in making the decision, the jury, the judge, they'll have to they'll be spending a lot of time trying to determine his character, and that's a very difficult thing to do based on his chart. Now remember, the Aruda Lagna can shift. if you yourself as the native, if you change your image, you can actually change your Aruda Lagna. And so I do see that in Brand's chart that usually when you change, you go to the seventh sign of the Aruda to make that change. That's the natural change. I mean, there are other ways to do the change, but usually the natural thing to do is if you are have a certain image and you want to change that image, then you can activate the Aruda Lagna in another sign. And this is what we see. This is what I've seen here is that he has changed his image to Taurus with Mercury, Sun, and K2. And so he's gone from this, Shagger of the Year award winner, this person who is extremely promiscuous and rewarded for that promiscuity, to a very different person, which is Sun Mercury K2 conjunction. Now, what's interesting here is that the Sun and Mercury combined form intelligence yoga. So when Sun and Mercury are together, person has intelligence and intelligence of speech. Mercury is retrograde, which gives an intensity to Mercury and also kind of a deeper desire involved in the mercurial activities. So this desire to communicate, this deepening of communication and saying the same thing over and over, retracing your steps, saying it again, like sort of treading over and over the same discourse over and over. That's Mercury in retrograde. Mercury's not in retrograde. It's just sort of more surface, kind of skimming the surface, talking like gossip and talking in a more surface level. When Mercury is retrograde, it takes on some of the qualities of Rahu because retrograde Rahu is permanently retrograde. So Mercury becomes more intense and kind of takes on a bit of that addictive personality. So you see that, in the time when he had his YouTube rising, it was almost like a compulsion every single day, talking, saying the things, talking truth to power, speaking. And Mercury is also Atmakaraka. So Mercury is the deeper, let's say the king of the soul in his chart. So it's very fulfilling to his soul to be speaking and speaking with intelligence and speaking truth to power. Now, K2 is there also, and that also makes sense because K2 is eccentric. And that's why some people say, what on earth is he saying? I don't understand a word he's saying. He talks with these very, you know, obtuse language, if I may say myself, very obtuse language using big words that people don't normally use in everyday parlance. He's using those words. Well, that's K2. K2 is eccentricity. And absolutely, he is eccentric in that way. But the Sun Mercury conjunction is where he gets his intelligence. Mercury is combust and retrograde at the same time. Retrograde gives that desire, that intensity, right, for speech and for communicating to people. This combustion gives a spiritual bend and a conformity. So when Mercury is closer to the sun, close to the sun to the point where it's being combusted by the sun, it's like falls in line. It stops saying wrong speech and starts speaking right speech. Now, you might agree or disagree whether he's saying right or wrong speech. Some people say he is promoting disinformation online and he's scaring people away from things that would be beneficial to them that are given by the experts and so on. So you might say that he is engaged in wrong speech. But in his way of thinking, like his mind, he is speaking the truth. He is speaking truth to power. Now, on top of that, Mercury in the Navamsha chart, Mercury is in Virgo where it exalts. So Mercury is very powerful, very, very powerful because do you see that Mercury in the Navamsha chart, Mercury is is exalted. Mercury is exalted. So, and that's the deeper reality. And not to mention with Rahu, and Rahu also owns Virgo. This is a very, very powerful combination of Mercury and Rahu in uh, in the Navamsha chart, and it colors or it gives sort of it undergirds the energy that you see in the D1. So Rahu and Mercury are both extremely powerful. So here he's tried to flip his image. Now I I'm not saying that he's deliberately flipping his image to try to evade criminal charges. Some people are saying that. Some people are absolutely saying that he knows he's guilty. He knows he's, crossed the legal boundary. He knows he's guilty. So he is trying to look better than he actually is. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's what's happening. I think he has actually developed as a person, and part of his development has been a move away from this Aruda Lagna of Rahu in Scorpio. Now, the thing that I want to point out here in the Vimsho Dasha, the Utpanna variation of Vimsho Dasha, is that if we take Uttara Bhadrapada as his nakshatra, therefore the morning time, 12:05 a.m., then he's in Jupiter Mahadasha, Rahu Antardasha. And then there are more divisionals after that. So Jupiter Rahu is where we find him now between July 2026 and November 2026. So this court dates are happening in Jupiter, Rahu. And if you want to get very specific, if you look at the scheme here, 2026, the 11th of October, 2026, okay? That's going year, month, day, right? Year, month, day. The 11th of October, 2026, it goes to K2. So that is Jupiter, Rahu, K2. We're going to sub dashas. Jupiter, Rahu, Ketu. So what do we determine about the outcome of the court case based on Jupiter, Rahu, Ketu? Well, this is my interpretation. My interpretation is that the fact that he has his Aruda Lagna, his Janma, his natal Aruda Lagna in Scorpio, and he has done some work to shift that image to the Taurus, the K2 Mercury Sun. What's going to happen in the court case is it's going to snap back to this, right? Because, well, for obvious reasons, they're going to bring back all the history of his bad behavior, all his transgressions, all his inappropriateness, and there's like a mountain of, like, it'll be a feeding frenzy of all the things he said that would incriminate him, right? Because he had a whole stand-up comedy routine, which was, one could say perhaps sexually distasteful, which fits with theory that he's a sexual rapist and predator. So what's going to happen during the court case is that this image is going to snap back to Rahu. And this is going to dominate during the time of his court case. The Saturn in Gemini, the Lagnesh in Gemini, is going to be working to speak truth to power. He's going to continue doing that, and now he's using his Christianity as his base to continue this conviction that I'm just going to be truthful. And how the cards fall, they may fall as they will. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to speak the truth of everything. That's his Saturn in Gemini, Saturn in the sixth house, speaking truth in court, speaking truth to power, and so on. But the dasha period is really going to highlight Rahu and Jupiter. And the challenge of Jupiter is an MKS, Marna Karnastana, Marna Karakastana, which is in the third house from the Lagnesh. This is where your enemies come forward. Jupiter also rules the 12th house. That's the house of secret enemies as well as prison. The 12th house is the house of secret enemies and prison, because you know the sixth house is the house of overt enemies, the enemies that you know. The 12th house is the house of enemies that you don't know. And so far, I don't know if he knows now, but in the Channel 4 documentary, where the allegations came forward, they were anonymous. The women that came forward were anonymous. Maybe he knows who they are, but he also claimed he didn't know who they were because they didn't come forward with their name. So that's secret enemies. That happened during Jupiter Mahadasha. So that gives another drop in the bucket, sort of, to suggest that he was Jupiter. He's currently in Jupiter, period, because secret enemies have come forward. MKS Jupiter, enemies coming forward. Now, here, the 12th house, Jupiter ruling Sagittarius, which is the 12th house, is prison. Okay, incarceration, prison. So, so this is also there, and so I think that this Jupiter Rahu Vimchotri periods are not going to work in his favor for the courts, and I do think he will be incarcerated. That's my take. Now, if we take the later time, just as an example, if we take the later time of 11:58 p.m., then he's in Saturn period. Saturn period started in 2021. Okay, and then during the court case, um, he is. Let me just see here. So if he is born in the evening, just before midnight, then the Mahadasha is Saturn. That started in 2021. It goes until 2040. And then during the court trial, he will be in Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter. Because you can see here, even then, the Jupiter period starts July 29th, goes until, right. So then Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter, and then we have Venus. Saturn, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus period. So if we think of that, now I would say that if the later time is correct, then he has a greater chance of being exonerated because Saturn is very strong. Saturn will Saturn is strong in the Navamsha chart as well, in Pushkaramsha. In Taurus is a very good position. So Saturn is strong in Gemini and in the sixth house, and this is his calling, right? This being in court, speaking the truth in a Saturnian way, speaking the truth in under pressure, right? That is Saturn in the sixth house as Lagnesh. And so, but also Mercury is in the fifth house, which is 12th from the sixth. So Saturn and Mercury have a 2-12 relationship, which is not good. So that may be less than ideal. Um, so my estimation is that if he was born at the later time, he has a greater chance of being exonerated. If he was born at the former time, he is going to be fighting a huge battle to fight off the image that he, left years ago, that image of this sexually inappropriate predator, this Rahu in Scorpio image. So I think that that is correct. My assumption is that that is correct. Jupiter, Rahu, Rahu, Ketu. And then you have Rahu and Ketu involved in the Vimshotri, in the planets during this Vimshotri Dasha, because you have, well, Rahu, so Ketu goes from October 11th to the 18th, and then it carries on. But the start date of the courts court case is going to be Jupiter, Rahu, Rahu, Ketu. So Rahu and Ketu are there. It's to be seen, but my assessment is that um, he will have he will likely face incarceration, and his there is something appealing about retreat in his chart as well. He himself finds that there's something appealing about that. If he walks away exonerated, there will be a part of him that will be satisfied and relieved for his family, for his reputation. But there's also an experience that he will not be receiving, which he would be receiving in prison. So if the prison was, a low security prison for a short period of time, then he can, feel like he has atoned for his misbehaviors. He is learning something. He has an opportunity to experience this. Uttara Bhadrapada people go into all the nooks and crannies of society. They want to see all the different areas and places and things. So prison could be like to have an insider view of what it's like. I'm not romanticizing prison, of course, but there is something in his chart, especially the fact that if this is Jupiter Mahadasha and Jupiter rules the 12th house, that proximity to the idea of prison or that feeling of prison um, may mean that the scales of justice tip in the favor of incarceration. That's my theory. Now we have to see if that's what will happen. Okay, this concludes my video and my series on Russell Brand. I hope you found this interesting at least. Maybe you agree or disagree. You can let me know. Okay, bye-bye.